Hey guys, and welcome back to another Cultured Boys discussion. I'm Pepe, and I'm joined by Nathan. And today we carry on with the Spooktober theme. And this week we're going to be talking about the master of Japanese horror, the man himself, that is Junji Ito. Like we're going to be talking about all the manga, some of the anime stuff that's come out a little bit, maybe, and just some general bits and pieces. You know what I mean? Bits and pieces. How you doing, Nate? You well? Ooh,
I am.
bits and pieces.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm actually really excited about this one because before we planned this episode, I don't think I've ever actually read any of Junji Ito's work, but I've always wanted to. So I'm actually really glad we did this.
It's one of those ones, right? Because I like, even though he's been going for like years and years, like I only really started reading his stuff like a few years ago, like maybe like about 2019. I tell you what kind of started me on it though. It was there was a manga exhibition in London, like probably 2019, like in the summer. I
Mhm.
don't like we both went to that, didn't we?
Yeah.
There's like they showcased all these different like pieces of manga art, like some of the like best drawings in manga and stuff. And one of the like dangling like promo things, I can't remember what exactly they're called, like they hang from the ceiling or whatever. Like I don't like posters, kind of hanging posters. I don't freaking
I
know,
I
but
guess so. Like
but like one of them was like of this like one of the panels from Junji Ito's Uzumaki, and I saw that I was like, freaking hell, that is like some mad artwork going on there. And then I think it was like a little bit after that, I did some research into it, found out it was Junji Ito's manga, and I was like, I'll pick that up. Like I found it in like my Waterstones or whatever, like that one of the nearest booksellers, and I picked it up. It's like a pretty hefty book as well.
yeah, that
Like
is a thick book.
yeah, it's like got like about how many pages in it? Like about 50, like 500. I don't know. I got it here right next to me. It doesn't even say the page number
I
on it,
mean,
but
to
who
be
knows?
fair, that one I believe is one of the proper because normally
Mm.
Junji Ito is like a collection of stories, almost like an
Yes.
anthology. But I believe Uzumaki is one of his like proper like mangas where
Yeah.
it is just one continuous story. I think it's like 20 chapters or something.
Literally, yeah, 20 chapters, 648 pages of this.
Dang.
So it is a thick book, but I would not recommend. Like, I could not recommend this more. God, the hell, that was going to be going the other
Yeah,
way.
I
But
thought it was going the
I
absolute
could not
opposite. Like,
recommend this.
I don't like this book, but oh, okay, well then.
No, no,
Um,
I couldn't recommend it more. This is like such like if you're just into like art or whatever, like even if you're not into the horror like franchise kind of
oh
feel
mate,
horror genre,
that
I'd
is
really
that is
recommend.
one thing that I've always. That's why I've always sort of been interested in Junji Ito's work. It's not so much that I've ever heard about people talking about the stories. It's always like I've seen like a panel or a page or something, and it's always like, okay, yeah, like his characters is. It was what we were talking about with the ghost stories review. Like his characters, when they're normal, look of that time period. Like they all have that same sort of like look. But then
Mm-hmm.
where he really shines is when it starts to get creepy and warped. And you're like, oh my God, the shading, the line work, like
Yeah.
it all just perfectly conveys this like creepiness.
Oh, it's like it's the way he like draws like contortion and stuff like that. Or like he just draws like shapes where like the human body should not be able to go into.
Oh,
And it
mate.
just like it's not so much it's horror like, oh my god, I'm scared, I can't like sleep at night or whatever. It is just like the imagery. Like he really just
Yeah.
knows like how to just like
Draw
get a
that
creepy like
disturbing. Yeah. Oh, mate.
yeah, disturbing. That is like the definitely the word for it. It's just like fucking hell. That's like that is a lot for to look at right now in terms of panels. But yeah, Uzumaki just does it perfectly as well because like we were saying, a lot of his ones are like kind of anthology, like one-off chapter kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Like Uzumaki, like reading the whole volume of it, it kind of feels like it is kind of like that anthology style. Like he's writing different scenarios in which a spiral takes over a town. But each chapter has a different story to it. So like even though it follows the two main characters, like each chapter focuses on a different side character and how they become obsessed with the spiral, or like and how they
Okay.
end up like how this town like slowly but surely like develops like into like this goes into madness basically, like just spirals if you will,
Well,
spirals
I
into
mean,
madness.
that's what Uzumaki translates to is spiral, so
Yeah,
it makes
so
sense. I haven't read that one personally. I will get around to it at some point because I do want to continue reading more of his works.
mhm.
For the preparation of this episode, I only read two one shots,
Yeah.
and one of them I didn't think was so strong. It just sort of felt like a very short story, and even in
Mhm.
terms of the artwork, there wasn't anything like crazy.
Yeah.
And that one was called Phantom Mansion,
Okay.
published in the year 2000, and it follows the main character Koseki. He gets
Mhm.
a job at the mansion, and the job is to basically run around the whole mansion and sort of like rub the air or spray medicine because
Interesting.
the owner's son has like phantom limb syndrome,
All
but
right.
it's for it like it was getting progressively worse. So now the kid always feels pain, but it's not just like on his body, it's around the entire mansion. So they've got like a whole team of people just doing this job. You like they'll run to a specific room because the kid can feel it specifically like in this room, in that corner, on this part of the
Yeah.
wall. And like it's only creepy because eventually the main character finds out that it's the mansion somehow is like taking everybody's pain and putting it onto this one kid because like the other employees are like, what are you complaining about, like, and the main character's like, oh, I've just always been a bit sensitive to pain, and they're like, oh well, it's fine, like look at this injury, and it's like, oh, that's infected, you need to go to the hospital. But like
Mm.
all of the employees are like that. They're like, it's fine. I can't feel it anyway.
Uh-huh.
So like, uh, eventually it just gets to a point where everybody's looking more broken down, and that's where the art style comes in. But it's not so much that they're contorted. It's all like their eyes, their face starts to get a lot darker. There's a lot more like
Mhm.
wrinkle work.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a lot more of that line work, and then the eyes, like the pupils turn white, but everything else is blacked out and they
Yeah.
become a little more distorted.
It's just like I can already imagine what it looks like, and it is just like it's like he does
Yeah,
expressions so well. That's one of the things as well. Like just
yeah, he really
like
does. Like even when those faces of the other employees, like when they were all like twisted and whatever towards the end of the story,
mm,
you could still sort of feel that like thinking of the character,
mhm,
like because
yeah.
basically they were hired by the kid's dad, but he dies
Mhm.
because he gets knocked over and pushed into a broken like vase or vase,
Okay.
and he has like a cut on his head. But because the mansion's been taking everyone's pain, you don't know that at the start. He's like not feeling it, and he doesn't go to the
Okay.
hospital because he's too focused on looking after his son. Anyway, he dies, and the kid's mum is like talking to the employees, and they're like, maybe you should let the kid like die. As in, like
Mhm.
it'd be the you'd be saving him, put him out of his
Mhm.
misery. And she's like, no, are you worried about your wages? I'll, for whoever stays, the last person will get my family's entire fortune if you all stay and look after, like, keep relieving my son's pain. And it basically, everybody starts dying off because, like I said, they're all injured. They've all got serious injuries and they're getting like septicemia and infections and
Yeah.
all sorts. And it's like basically down to like three guys, the main character and two other guys. The two other guys actually uh kill the kid and the mum,
Okay.
and basically what's left is these three, as there are dead bodies around. The main characters can feel all the pain and whatever's going on in the mansion now because it's like transferred to him.
Jesus.
And yeah,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
it's not so much like a creepy story, but like the art is what really sells it.
Mm.
And like,
I mean, even then, it's a situation, isn't it? That's the one thing. Like,
yeah,
it's
but
like it's still. like has that horror, like supernatural kind of like eeriness about it, which I
Yeah.
think he does really well as well. Some like it does again, it doesn't feel like horror. It feels a lot more like twisted and like evil, if anything.
Yeah, and
Like he portrays evil really well.
I think that's what I needed to get into my mind at first, because like if people are like me, you just always hear online like, oh, master of horror Junji Ito, so like you go in thinking that everything is just gonna be like the scariest fucking thing, and like, oh man, you're gonna shit your pants, you're gonna piss yourself,
Mm,
you know what I mean? But it's like, no, it doesn't have to always just be like creepy horror. It's like some of the things can just be like in Phantom Mansion, like turns out there's just some sort of supernatural thing, and the horror is
mm.
the actions of people's evils.
Yeah. I think it is horror at the end of the day. It is horror, like his whole genre. Like, but what really drives it? I don't think necessarily it's a story that does it. But I don't know. I'm just saying that I've just opened a random page in Uzumaki right now, right? And
Uh-huh.
it's about this this kid that like gets run over,
Oh,
and he
okay.
gets caught
Ugh.
underneath a car. But like he used to jump out at people, and that was his thing. And then, but like, the two main characters go to visit his grave, and he literally jumps out of his grave, but he's all stitched up because he got run over by the car, and he's literally like a spring. So, but
I can imagine what that looks like.
see, I realize now that like, well, I just said, oh yeah, it's not really horror; it's just really creepy. Like, okay, no, this is horror. These are people being chased through a field by a corpse with no legs that develops a spring from his spine and is just jumping around.
Okay, like
So
that might be a bad example of what we were trying to say, but like
yeah, it's literally the first thing. That was chapter 7 in this fucking 20 chapter
like
book.
I yeah, I just want people to sort of learn to temper their expectations,
Mm,
because yes, he is very good at horror, and yes, the illustrations are amazing, but it isn't always going to be, because like even the second one I read
mhm.
wasn't that creepy until the end. Like the
Yeah,
story itself was more like interesting than creepy, because I the second one shot I read was actually part published as part of one of his anthologies called Gyo, but it was volume 2.
yeah,
And that was published in May 30th, 2002. And I read the one
yes.
called The Enigma of Amigata Fault.
Okay, yeah. Is it? I think I know this one actually.
Okay,
Is
so
it?
that's the
Yeah, go.
one where there's the huge earthquake in Prefecture.
Yeah.
And then there's like a massive fault line opens.
Uh huh.
But when people go there, like everyone was drawn there because there's these cutouts in the wall.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
right.
I've
So
read
Pepe
this.
knows this one, right?
Yeah.
And basically these cutouts in the wall, people go there because they realize that's their silhouette. Like, and it's carved perfectly for them, but they don't understand how it's there, because they're supposed to have been like prehistoric or whatever. Like they're
Mm,
supposed to have been from a long time ago. So how are like modern people's like, silhouettes in these walls?
mm-hmm.
They're trying to discover it, and there's like a research team there, and they've sent down a 30-meter like fiber optic camera cable, and they can't see anything.
Hmm.
It turns out that those holes were carved to punish people, and it's carved in such a way that you fit in perfectly, but you can't go backwards. So you're always just sliding through, but then it
Yeah.
starts to contort,
Yeah.
and like,
And that's where it just gets really freaking.
yeah.
Like, that's where it starts
But
getting
that's the
creepy.
thing, like you read so much of this, but they don't tell Junji Ito doesn't tell you any of that until like towards the end, because the main character is like, "Oh, I had a nightmare where I was back in time and I was being punished for some heinous crime I did." And then he like gets put into one of those holes,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Yeah, the further in you go, like the neck was starting to get longer and longer, and it's like you can see the character's like neck elongating."
Yeah.
And then like at the end, the research team go to the opposite side, and they're like, "Oh, there's some more holes, but these ones don't look like the other side." I wonder if
Yeah.
they're connected to the other side of the fault, and like they shine a torch in there, and you can just see like this
Oh yeah.
fucked up, contorted corpse. But like you
Mm-hmm.
can just barely make it out, but you
It's
can
like
see it's
they're
there.
like thin, isn't they? That's the thing. Like it's just
Yeah.
all like sort of like elongated. The limbs are like freaking long as anything. And it's just like it is like it's one of those ones that I I remember reading that one like because I got into Junji Ito, but I read that one secondary. But it's also one of the most famous ones. That one.
Is it?
Like, because they
I
just
didn't know
keep on
that.
going, don't they? They just
Yeah.
they just like keep like, oh, this hole's so cool. I just keep on going, and it just like they just disappear off in the distance. It's mad. It's one of those ones like, how do you even come up with that concept? This is the one thing
I
like
know,
that is
right?
such a weird concept of a thing, and like this is the one thing about Junji Ito is that all those stories that he has, they're original. They're so original
Oh, yeah,
and
for
so
sure. Like,
unique.
because, like you said, who would ever think, oh, yeah, you know what? I'm going to write a story where there's an earthquake and then part of the fucking landscape comes up, but there's going to be human shaped holes in the wall, but they're
Yeah.
going to be perfect for people to walk in. And then, like, several hundred meters in, like, it's going to get worse and they're going to die. And it turns, those holes are carved because they need to be punished. You're like, I would
S-
never come up with that.
it's so freaking weird. I think that's why he's so freaking good at it though, because each concept is just so just unique and original. And like, if you want to like just read it for a good story, like this is what I mean. Even if you're not into horror, like I said before, like these like stories will be like, wow, okay. It's a mix of that and the art, like is so good. I think that's why I like really liked Uzumaki because it is like a continuous story like about how this town just like goes into fucking madness. Like spirals down into it. I gotta keep saying it because I think it's a great pun.
Well, I mean, it's
um
also like that also goes into what we're saying though, doesn't it? Like that he took just the simple word spiral and has
yeah,
turned it into several different stories and interpretations of horror with just spiral.
it's just like, do you know the concept of it at all, Nathan?
I actually don't. I just know it's Uzumaki is spiral and that like a town gets obsessed with spirals. That's it.
So without going too into it, it's like how it starts is like this guy called what is it? Shuichi. Shuichi. I just wanted to double
Okay.
check it because I was going to say Shinji and I was like, that's not right. Shuichi. And basically, his dad becomes obsessed with a spiral, like, or the shape of spirals.
Okay.
And like, he ends up like being really obsessed with like, he finds like a snail like crawling up a wall of it and he's just staring at it for hours. And like, he gets his neighbor to make a pot for him that has loads of spirals on and becomes obsessed with it and then he just
Okay.
tells his family like, I just want to be a spiral. And like they're like, okay, look, you need help. You just need like just like, take the spirals away. And he just goes mad. He's like, no, don't you dare take my spirals away. And then he, I'm gonna like again, I'm gonna try and not give too many spoilers away. But like his dad dies, and the way he dies is he becomes a spiral himself. So like I said, the contortion stuff.
Yeah.
This is it. Like so that is how it all kicks off, and it all stems that one man's obsession. Just like, and then I don't want to get into how the town gets
Okay. Well,
gets into this spiral
yeah.
thing,
Well,
but
that's
it
fine.
is
We'll leave it at that. But
because
uh,
that's what's gonna start you off with it because it is just like how you go think to yourself after my explanation like how does one man's death becoming obsessed with spirals affect a whole town and then you'll soon find out like what the fuck happens because it is so twisted.
that's all I know is that like it's
Yeah.
about a town that gets obsessed with spirals. But that's it. Like so that's one I do want to read because I've seen it quite a few times. Like you go to any place that sells manga, the Uzumaki is normally
Mm.
there.
Well, that's the thing as well. It's actually getting an anime. I
Is
think
it?
it's
Or I don't know if that's something. That's the thing. Like something like Junji Ito's work, I don't mind if it's static on paper
mhm.
or whatever. Like I can read the manga and I'll probably be a bit creeped out, but I'm not gonna be like scared. But I
Yeah.
think as soon as it becomes an anime and it's got motion, I think that's a bit too much for me.
Yeah, I think this is one thing about it as well. Like, the trailer looks so freaking good because it's not like your typical anime where it's like, oh, look, it's like colored away. It's all black and white. So it's a whole
Mm,
black and white anime, and it's all like kind of like it's basically the manga just
uh,
like really animated. Just seeing it, like
I don't,
I'd
I
recommend
don't,
watching it.
I don't need to see Junji Ito's artwork like in motion, like because like if you can find someone who can sort of replicate that style really well,
Mm,
I don't
yeah.
want to imagine what happens when those things move.
Yeah, it's well. He's actually got the anime. He's got his own anime on Crunchyroll at the moment. It's called just the Junji Ito collection, and there's like a basically it's like taking a few of like his most famous stories. I don't think the one that you mentioned before with the holes. I can't remember what it's called. Sorry,
The Enigma of Amigara
it,
Fault.
that one. Yeah, I don't think that's animated, but there's like some of his other ones which are like again from anthologies. Like he's they're taken. Like it's they've animated some of those. I haven't heard any reviews from it, but
I want
like
to say I'd check it out, but I'm not gonna. I just know,
I'm quite
I
tempted to
just
check it
know
out.
I
But
won't.
but what I'm most excited by is the Uzumaki anime. Like the way it looks, the trailer looks incredible, and I'm just curious to see what it's like. The manga's great, so hopefully, like if you're following that and with a good animation style, freaking hell, like,
Uh,
you hope it's gonna be good. But yeah, yeah, that's something to look forward. I think it's coming out next year. It was supposed to be delayed until this year, but been delayed quite a few times. Looking at it, the anime was initially supposed to appear in 2020. I guess like COVID might have pushed it back.
Probably, but I guess it's also one of those things that you could almost indefinitely push back if you needed to, because
Yeah.
it's not to say anything against Junji Ito, but like it's not exactly like many people are going to be hype. Like it's not like the current sort of landscape where it's like he. It's not a massive shonen that people are excited for. It's not this. It's not that.
Mm,
Like, and also with the art, yeah, you're gonna want to get that right
yeah.
because
Especially with a series like this, like
exactly
you don't want to rush this kind of thing. You want to make sure that
with a
like it
series like
looks
that
good.
with a famous art like mangaka like that who's got such a style. If you fuck that up,
Yeah.
mate, you're in for some horror yourself. The internet gonna slay you.
I mean, hopefully he comes out soon. I'm looking forward to it regardless. And the trailer's hype. It looks good. I think people are excited for it. But obviously, since it was announced in 2020 or like an expected release date of 2020, it's kind of just like slowed down since then. And so maybe the hype isn't as big for it as it was at first. But I don't know. It's a popular series, so
I'm
who
sure it'll
knows?
be one of those things that just once it's out, it if it doesn't gain traction, it'll have a cult following and like it will be one of those if you know kind of things.
Yeah,
But what I do
absolutely.
want to ask you
Yes.
is there any more like of Junji Ito's works that you would recommend? Like any more that you've read that you really think need to be out there?
I'm one of those people with Junji Ito's stuff is that Uzumaki is 100% my favorite, but I've read some of his anthologies, and I've always felt that like with his work as well, it feels like it's meant to be like picked up and read in a book rather than online. This is like one of those things, because like, obviously there's some people that go, oh yeah, just read Junji Ito like online, flick through the pages or whatever.
Yep,
But like this, like I feel like the book, like having that physical, like just like that hardback like in your hands, like reading through it, it just feels so much nicer as well. So it's one of those where like like one of the reasons why I haven't read much like as much of his work as some people is because I'm just always keen to buy the book itself, and they are quite expensive as well because they're gonna be good regardless. Always hardback,
fair.
always like pretty decent. Um, so I've read like, yeah, so Uzumaki's my favorite. The other ones I've read are Gyo as well. So Gyo is like you said, there's got some anthology moments in it, but the whole story of Gyo is kind of like this I'm trying to remember exactly because it's been a few years since I read it, but it's where like the ocean or like the fish or like kind of get taken over by parasites.
Okay.
So you'll end up finding that like fish suddenly end up developing legs and they start walking or whatever. But it turns out they're infected by a parasite, which is also taking over other creatures. So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of spreads a little bit, right? So it goes from like small fish or whatever, then it goes to sharks. So like there's like one section in Gyo where like this basically there's a shark with legs just walking around, and like with the whole like where I said the parasite, it hungers for humans, I assume, or just any living creature. And so they start like crawling around eating eating people basically. And there's this whole section of Gyo where it's literally just this shark on legs, and that's like one of my favorite things in
If
manga
you
in general.
if you hadn't, we weren't talking about Junji Ito and you just told me all of that, I would have
Yeah,
thought you're talking to me about some like low budget like film, like a
not
Sharknado
gonna
or
lie,
something.
did it get made into a film? I don't think it did. Hold on. I gotta research this quick.
But like, do you know what I mean? Like, this sounds like like Sharknado, Sharktopus, and
Dude, it actually did get made into a film.
oh,
Gyo
okay.
Tokyo Fish Attack movie trailer. I can't imagine it's too good, but but like it's one of those ones like in concepts I feel like it works like in a manga and stuff. Um, it is just it is
It.
bizarre. It's one of those like like Uzumaki is just really creepy. This is like a very bizarre one with horror elements of like Jesus Christ, got to run away from these fucking fish with legs.
I mean, I
Um,
could understand how that's
yeah,
creepy,
yeah.
but like, again, I guess I'd have to read it because on paper it's just sort of like, meh, whatever.
It sounds quite stupid. Yeah,
Yeah, it does sound kind of daft, but
I quite enjoyed it, but like, I think as again like it kind of spreads throughout. It's very similar in terms of like it's a village or whatever or country that gets taken over by these creatures, and then infects humans and stuff as well. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. I don't want to spoil it too much. Again, what Junji Ito does best, in my opinion, is emotions and contortion and really creepy drawings. And it's more towards the second half of Gyo where it comes a bit more like it goes into that more creepy human contorted stuff that we're like talking of, like all the creepiness. So yeah, that's one thing to consider. Yeah, again, it does sound daft, but I'd recommend reading that. I've currently I'm halfway through Tomy as well.
okay, that's another like one of the big ones I saw.
That is like that's the one thing. Like when you find like all the Junji Ito like books on the shelves and that, like Tomy Uzumaki Gyo, like some of his like big like compilations of those stories, like or running stories at least, like 20 chapters at least of running running storyline. Um but Tomy is more grounded supernatural, not as out there as Uzumaki, but it's about this girl that gets killed, and she starts haunting her classmates. And
Okay,
then sooner or later, like she goes just from haunting her classmates to other just random people that have connections to them. And
okay,
then it's just about how this girl, like she even changes her identity, like as a ghost, and that she just like gets into the human world, starts like there's a lot that goes on in it, right? Because this is the one thing. It isn't just with Uzumaki, it's set in a certain space of time
yeah,
where it's like, oh yeah, this is like all happening in the space of a month or a year or whatever. And Gyo is very similar. That happens in about space of a week, I think. Whereas Tomy goes over the space of like years, and
whoa,
it's all the space like the idea of like this girl like just troubling people that have connections to other people that were originally bullied in that class.
dang!
And
So
it is
this girl's like,
yeah,
this ghost is playing the long con, like she's in
yeah,
it for
like
the
and then
long
like
haul,
as I
man.
said, like she gets back, like she's just possessing people at some points. Like some people get obsessed with her, so like she sort of like
Dang,
there's a whole branch of stuff that goes on. As I said, she changes her identity. She becomes like a tumor at one point, I believe, and like
what the
she
hell?
she like expands and like duplicates herself, like goes into hospitals and stuff like that. It is absolutely nuts and it's creepy and it is. As I said, I'm halfway through it at the moment. There's all that, and that's only halfway through, and like it's really messed up at the start, like on how like it happens, like how she becomes haunting people. But yeah,
Okay,
it
well
is a really
then
big one.
that's another one that I'll have to put on my list.
That one's like, I feel like like judging by the art as well, it feels like I think like Uzumaki was made at a later date, like whereas Tomy I feel like maybe is one of his earlier works.
Hmm.
Because some of the artwork in it does seem very. I don't want to rip on it because it still holds that creep factor. Don't get me wrong; it is still creepy as anything, but it's not as some panels aren't as detailed as
Okay.
Uzumaki. So I'd say like go into reading that like bearing that in mind or whatever. But yeah, I'd say this is why I always come back to Uzumaki at the end of the day because again, yeah, it's probably his most popular work, and you can see why because it is just absolutely fantastic and like all the like as I said, drawing, storyline, that kind of stuff. It ends. The ending is interesting as well, but I'd be open to hear people's interpretation of the ending of Uzumaki because I always found it quite weird. But
Okay.
like compared to the story itself is like incredible, but the ending just really catches me off guard all the time. And I'd like if there's anyone out there that has read Uzumaki, I'd like to hear your opinions on the ending because Nathan maybe avoid the comments if there is something that's written down.
Okay.
but
Well,
yeah,
I'll stop you there before you accidentally
Mhm.
spoil something or something. Um, I actually don't have anything else to say about Junji Ito because
Yeah.
I've only got so much
Out of curiosity,
experience.
because like I can enjoy some horror films, but I wouldn't go out my way to watch them. And like we said in previous discussions that you're not big into horror films in general,
No, I'm
right?
not.
Like what would you like reading horror manga, is that something that's ever appealed to you at all?
I find with certain mediums, it's just easier to deal with it. So
Yeah.
like manga, I'm fine with. Like I'll read a horror manga, like as long as the story is interesting or whatever. Like I have an overactive imagination, so it'll probably creep me out, and I'll probably start seeing things at night, right? But that doesn't stop me from reading it.
Yeah.
Whereas I find like games and more interactive mediums or
Yeah.
whatever, like movies and stuff, because they tend to jump scare you. I'm just not into the jump scares,
Yeah,
right?
you're just not into jump scares. Yeah, and realistically with manga, you can control that a little bit, and even with any novel, really.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
so I don't know. I guess that's why I don't tend to watch horror movies, play horror games. Is like,
Hmm.
yes, they can make really creepy atmospheres and things will happen, but it tends to always end up just being a jump scare. And I was just
Yeah.
like, it's not so much like scary as it is just like boo, like oh my god,
Yeah.
oh shocked, oh my
Yeah.
god, like.
Yeah.
But I do actually really really want to go and read some of the other like stories he's written
Yeah.
because
That's
like
fair.
they're interesting concepts, and again, we've said it and we'll keep saying it, but when it has to get creepy, the man knows
Mhm.
how to draw creepy.
Absolutely. This is one thing as well. Like, I wanted to just before we end the episode, I just wanted to say like I am still getting a lot into Junji Ito stuff. And I know he's produced a lot of work, but like if there's anything that anyone else wants to recommend at all, I'd be like definitely open to reading it. I'm always looking to see what I should read next.
Oh
And
yeah, for
yeah,
sure. Please let us know what we should read because
mm,
I'd be interested as well. Like it's it's manga. It's just more to read. It'd be cool, and it's something different because as we've established in many episodes, I don't tend to read much outside of shonen. So like,
mm.
some horror manga might be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Culture boys get into horror manga. Let's do it.
Well, I mean, now would be
No.
the time, wouldn't it? It's
Yeah.
Spooktober.
I you know what?
Ooh.
I'm tempted after doing this episode, I might actually reread Uzumaki. I know I've said I'm halfway to Toby, I haven't finished it. But like just having it sat on my desk right now and just flicking through it, like just how good this manga is. Like, I got this episode is basically Pepe just fangirls over Uzumaki. Like
Well,
I feel like this was his bid. Like, oh yeah, Junji Ito episode, but Uzumaki episode more than anything. But yes, is there anything else you have to say, Nathan, before we
No, I
carry
don't
on
have
with the end
anything
of
to
this
say,
episode?
so I will say this. Thanks for listening, guys. Don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, hit that bell button so you get notified when our next video comes out, and check us out on podcast platforms. We've got the links in the description, and we'll catch you next week for the final Spooktober.
Ooh,
Bye.
bye.